Welcome back to the Big Steps, Bold Stories podcast. Today, I am joined by the lovely Rachel Marie Martin. I met Rachel back around 2014 when her and her husband came out to Vancouver, and all we did was talk about blogging all day long. It was wonderful. It was a great get together, and we had so much fun. And today on the podcast, we talk about her blog, Finding Joy, how she started it many years ago, what the blogging world was like back then, what it's like today, how she put in the grit and the work into her blog. And then it grew into 3 books. And we just had so much fun connecting. And her moment that she had in Times Square this summer, it was just wonderful to connect with her, and I'm thrilled to share her with you today. I am joined here with the lovely Rachel Marie Martin from findingjoy.net. Thank you so much, Rachel, for being here. It's been wonderful to see your journey and what's been going on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat today.
Yeah. So tell us about your blog, Finding Joy. How did that start? And yeah, how did that all happen?
All right. Well, I know there's like the long version, the short version, the really brief version, but I always start with my father was a physics major and engineer and an early adopter of technology. So when in the 80s, he bought a computer from some guy at a house, not Best Buy, not any of those electronic stores, a house. We walked in the kitchen. He said, "This is what we want." And a couple months later, he bought a book for me how to code. So I always think that's how it started, is my dad introducing me to a computer at a very young age. And just I grew up with it. So when the internet came, I just flowed right into it. I always tell people I'm an early adopter. And in the late 90s, I started in Yahoo groups. And in Yahoo groups, somebody said, it was about mid early 2000s at that point, you should
Mhm.
start a blog. And I was like, well, what's a blog? Not knowing, but as an early adopter, I said, okay. And I started a blog. I think it was 1990, I mean, 2004, 2005.
Yes.
And that blog morphed into Finding Joy, the that it is today. Just kept making the iterations, and here I am. And people like to refer to me as an OG blogger. So there you go.
Awesome. So, what has surprised you about the journey so far?
Well, it's really social media, the interesting parts of social media, because when you first started with it, there wasn't really social media. There was MySpace or all of that, but social media wasn't so much of the fabric of life. And as a blogger and an entrepreneur, I've gotten to see the rise and fall of so many different social media platforms. And I've got to see both sides of social media, how it can connect and how it can divide.
Hmm.
And I've been super, super passionate about what I produce and what I write, and my site and platform being a place of connection and community.
And Finding Joy is
Mhm.
written. What's the heart behind it?
It's really kind of my life journey, honestly. There was a point probably about 15 years ago, I was in an unhealthy marriage and my finances were terrible, terrible, terrible. And I was driving home and I would say it was the universe, God, what it was just it was just put on me. Was driving, it was the middle of winter and it was flat and the snow was covering the road. So it was one of those really, really cold days. And I just heard, you got to stop skirting this line. You just think, because I was thinking, I was waiting to live what I wanted to do, waiting until things got fixed. And I
Yeah.
knew that if I didn't choose to find joy, I was going to end up bitter. And what was put on my heart was that in the waiting, I was actually choosing to not do something, to not live out finding joy. And I was on that path towards bitterness. And
Yes.
to be honest, that's how it started. It was just this idea of, you know what? I'm going to live this life all in finding joy, even if it's not perfect.
Yeah, it's so true. Like I remember when my daughter was quite ill,
Mhm.
it was so clear. I had a
Mhm.
path to choose. I could choose faith or fear. That was it. Those were my two.
Yeah.
Like we can choose to be sad or not. Like I think people say like time heals. Sure, it does, but it's also like a choice. Healing is a choice at the same time, right? Joy
It
is
it
a choice.
is. It
Yeah.
is that choice part, and it's so powerful. And I think we forget that when we don't choose, when we decide to wait, we're actually choosing. We are actually
Yes.
choosing the not to do that. We're choosing what we don't want in some ways. And so
Yeah.
there's so much power in deciding, I'm going to choose this, even though I don't know how it will look, but I'm going to choose that faith. I'm going to choose joy. I'm going to choose all that stuff without knowing the plan. But I would rather choose that than this way.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah. So tell me about your books. Like
Okay.
your first book, like why, like what made you go, oh, I'm okay. It's time to write a book.
So that I love that. I really do love that question, especially being the blogger that started really early. I remember thinking, wouldn't it be cool to write a book? Never actually thinking what the process of a book was. But I
Right.
do have these memories of being a girl, a little girl pretending to write books. And all of those memories have been coming back the older I get, like, oh, it's always been a dream. But the first book really started because the first book, The Brave Art of Motherhood, because it was the readers saying, hey, do you have a book? Hey, do you have a book? Because prior to that, I had this Dear Mom letters, there was ebooks. And it just was the lining, it was just the timing. And I thought, okay, I'm going to write this book. And The Brave Art of Motherhood is really about how to get yourself unstuck, untethered in a situation while being a mom. Because I felt like there was all these fabulous self-help books, but there was never the equation of how do you do that when you have toddlers? How do you do that in the middle of things? And I wanted to incorporate both. And then my second book that was released last year was kind of one of those, I would say, author writer dream books, because my publisher right now was like, so we want you to write a book, but while you're writing it, could we release your letters, those Dear Mom letters, into a book? And I was like, well, do I have to do any writing? And they're like, no, just maybe a little touch up stuff, but you've already done it. I'm like, okay, I can do that. So Mom Enough was my collection of letters that I wrote over the last decade to moms, put into a book that was like a gift book. Because again, readers were saying, hey, do you have that ebook as a book? And then my latest book, Get Your Spark Back. I'm super, super proud of that book. And that book was written because of my own journey of like, who am I now? And what makes me happy? And I went through this process in like the 2020s, 2022, that whole time of figuring out my own spark.
Hmm.
And the readers again were like, hey, how do I get my spark back? And nobody ever said, hey, how do I get a spark? It was always my and personal. And I decided I am going to write that book about what it takes to reignite your soul, to say yes to yourself again. And that's that book.
And it's all like, I love this. I love this topic.
Thank you.
Love everything about getting your spark back because to me personally, it's like, um, you know, my spark, it was happening. It was going. Things were like working, and then all of a sudden it wasn't. Everything,
Mhm.
things hit, life hits. And I remember that. I remember who I was before. And but I think it's for me too, it's also a transformation into something completely different too. Like I'm a different person. That spark is different. It's a
Right.
it's a deeper, soulful, thoughtful. Anyhow, let's
I
just
love that. I love that even
yeah,
that you said soul, because
yeah,
when I was writing it, everyone always talks about your head and heart. And I was like, no, this is your soul, which I think is one
yeah.
level deeper than your heart. It's that part of you that can just lights up when you don't even know why. Or for me, like can start crying when I hear music because it touches something very deep in who I am. And I really believe that you're absolutely right about the spark, that soul of us. It changes, it morphs, and it moves, and it's sometimes we're just like that girl on fire, and the other times we're like, I don't know who I am. And the journey isn't light at once, keep it always ablaze. It's like, okay, you're going to go through these seasons, and when you feel like I don't know what to do next, here's the journey into coming back. How do I reignite it? How do I keep it going? How do I breathe life into my life again?
Yeah. So tell me about the media attention you've been getting. This is fun. Like I see you on Good Morning America. I see you happening
Yeah.
on all these shows and interviews. Like, how did this happen?
Well, you need a publicity team. I really, really, the longer I've been an entrepreneur, the more I realize that you can't do everything yourself. We just cannot. And if you do, you actually stall out because you're trying to do things that aren't that's your superpower. And I love speaking. I love sharing. I love the interviews. I mean, I might be nervous right before, and then I sit there and I'm like, yes, here I am.
Good.
And
Yeah.
I just love that energy.
Mhm.
But I have a fabulous publicity team. My husband, Dan, and we just decided, this is what we need to do. It's part of growing a business, growing a brand. Like you look at Target and Walmart and Amazon, and there's a section of them that's dedicated to that. And as you grow your business, your brand, we knew we can't do this part. So I'm very, very grateful for my media team for reaching out to all these people, and then I guess for, like you and I were talking about, for myself to say yes, to fill up my calendar with many dots on every day of stuff to do.
Right. Well, shout out to Dan because that's how I met you.
Yes,
That's
yes,
so cool.
he's great, he's
Yes.
fabulous. Yes.
Yeah, lovely that you guys found love, and it was great to meet you when you came to Vancouver and hang out for the day. That was a fun day.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that. Yeah.
It really, really was. I've been we talk to the kids all the time about Vancouver. Like, we're like, can you imagine you come over a hill and it's this giant city.
Yes.
So yeah, I just didn't expect it. I was like, what is this? And I
Yeah.
had just a lovely time there. Mm.
Yeah. So tell us about your moment in Times Square. That was so cool to see you posting about that.
It was. So I love that video, which I can send it to you if you need it. But so this video, my book was on a billboard, and I knew it was coming because I knew the time that it was going to be there. And so you're just waiting and waiting, and there's all this hustle and bustle. And then when it actually happened, the video is completely authentic and raw of just
Yeah.
pure joy of, oh my goodness, this is right there. And the neatest part to me afterwards, which I didn't know for a while, was there's a mom and a daughter behind us
Mhm.
who must have been watching the experience, and they kept looking up at the billboard and then looking back at myself. I was like, oh my gosh, they are watching this experience unfold with me. And
Amazing.
so it was a very cool moment in
I
time.
can only imagine how, you've had years of work and blogging, and people you don't realize how much goes into every single blog post that you write, and all that time and effort, and 3 books in, there you go.
Yeah, yeah, it is a lot of work. I remember probably about 2014, because I was traveling all the time, and that was probably during the Vancouver time.
Mhm.
And I remember being on a plane, and people just didn't understand the blogger thing. But I remember this one time I had a conversation for an entire flight with this man, and he kept asking all these questions about what I do and all of that in this entrepreneurial world. And then at the end, I said, you know what? I'm sorry, I didn't ever hear what you did. And he said, oh, I'm just a civil engineer.
Oh,
I was like,
just
and I realized our world is fascinating because it is a world of early adopters, of deciding, okay, I'm just going to give this thing a try.
Yeah, yeah, so cool. I like blogging is in my heart. I love it. I love the opportunities it presents people and the connections and the people
Yeah.
you become friends with. Before social media, like I tell people, we used to comment on each other's blogs all the time. Like, you know, I,
Yes.
I wish we got back to that because I love that because it just helps everybody, and it's fun to connect on the topic that has been shared, right?
Yeah. Like the blog rolls or the link ups. Like
Yes.
for
Yeah.
a while, I'm finding joy probably from 2010 to 2014.
Yeah.
every Friday I did a Friday favorites thing
Yeah.
and linked up, and people would come and they would share their posts. It was just all about what's good in your world, what's good. And
Yes.
I loved that because it gave bloggers a chance to connect. And I know as a blogger and an entrepreneur, you those moments when somebody gives you an opportunity to connect allows somebody else to grow. And
Yes.
that's the beauty of the whole thing.
I remember I did finish it Fridays, and I think
Yes,
Monday motivation. We had a name for every day. Like,
we did. We did. Yeah. I think there was like Wacky Wednesday.
yeah, well,
There was,
yeah. I had a graphic too for each day. Like, I don't know. I just
yeah.
get back. We should get back to that kind of stuff. It's so fun.
It is. I
Yeah.
think there's not the pressure of the social media. Social
Right.
media morphed into having to show up all the time in a different way, or to
Yeah.
you're competing against something different. So yeah, you're right. That simplicity of
Yeah.
I'm just going to write a post today,
Yes.
see where it goes.
So tell us, you did a big road trip this summer with Dan, and so
Mhm.
tell us about that. I'd love to hear how that went.
The book tour road trip. Is that
Yeah. Yeah.
okay? We drove and drove all over the country, except for we flew to San Francisco and back. And we just decided this is the behind the scenes effort that it takes to do something. And we drove to New York City in a day from Nashville, and we drove to Florida and back within the span of 3 days. And what's cool about road trips, or even doesn't even matter, but cool about the car is you're forced with conversation. You can come up with ideas. Like I always say, I love it sometimes when the bus was down and I could drive my kids to school,
Mhm.
because I would get them in the car and then they would open up. So for Dan and myself, for I mean, over a decade, we've been traveling, and so many of our ideas happen in a car or on a plane because you're you can't be busy with anything else in that moment. And
Yeah.
that's the cool part. There's no laundry calling.
So true. Yeah, it's private and yeah, it's
Yeah.
fun. Yeah, so cool. So I can't believe this is like the last question. It's
Really? All
like that.
right.
Yeah. So
All right.
so what would you say to someone who's listening today who wants to take that next step in their life and do something that's inside their heart, but is scared to do it? What would you say to them?
I would say that if you're scared, you've already taken that first step, because your brain has already thought, what if I try? And that if there was no fear or none of that, you're just kind of in stasis. But that scared part, it's the part of you that's like, oh my goodness. And it's not necessarily bad. I really want us to look at fear in a different way. Is sometimes fear is we are on the right track. It's that anticipation. So if you're feeling that nervousness, you don't have to know exactly the end. Like that's the thing, is you can have that goal out there, that target out there, but your job today is just to take one step. You might not even know if it might not even be the step that looks like it gets you there, but just take a step, and the next day take another step and another one, and there's no way after a year that you'll be in the same spot.
Yeah, so true. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
wow. Amazing. So thank you so much, Rachel, for being here. I appreciate you taking the time with us and just sharing from the heart. Thank you for being here today.
Super honored and super grateful we finally got to connect.
Yes, amazing. And for everyone listening, go to her blog. She's at findingjoy.net and just share in, yeah, finding your own joy and pursuing that. Thank you.
Thank you.